This is David Lefevre, Executive Director of the Methow Valley Interpretive Center in Twisp, Washington. This talk was given on February 21st, 2026 at the Twisp Valley Grange. It was part of our annual storytelling night called Keep the Fires Burning. The event started off with a flute prayer by Wenatchee Elder Arnold Cleveland and drumming by tribal members Cody Saint and Aaron Carden. It continued with a talk by Randy Lewis and the showing of a film called The Winter's Tale. Randy Lewis was born on the Colville Indian Reservation, but lived on and off the reservation because his parents fished at Celilo Falls, Oregon, before that traditional Indian fishing place was flooded by the Dalles Dam in 1957. He is a member of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation of the Wenatchee, Pasquosa, Methow, and Okanagan bands. Randy is a storyteller, teacher, civil rights organizer, and historian. His work draws deeply from traditional knowledge and oral traditions. I hope you enjoy this, and please visit the Methow Valley Interpretive Center in Twisp, Washington, and stay tuned to events like this at our website, www.methowvalleyinterpretivecenter.org.
I have here, ready to go, a video that we did. I moved to Wenatchee. I've been living in Seattle where I had my galleries and my frame shops for many years. I worked as the deputy director for United Indians of All Tribes Foundation and as one of their founders. And the place itself, the Daybreak Star Art Center, if you've never been there, how many of you have been there? Oh, I'm shocked. They actually let you in there. No, it's a beautiful center. It's a world-class center. And it came about from the invasion of Fort Lawton in 1970 by United Indians of All Tribes. It stemmed out of, we all come out of the civil rights movement. And it was actions from the civil rights movement in 1969 that precipitated the invasion of Alcatraz, the occupation of Alcatraz Island for 18 months. And so out of that came this idea that, hey, maybe we can do more. We gained momentum. The whole world was watching us. So after a gathering in Olympia on the state capitol, one of my friends, Bernie Whitebear, who grew up in Malott, him and his brother Lonnie and Luana, they lived in Malott, and they all became very successful in many ways. Lonnie became a prolific writer, and Luana went to Washington, D.C. and became the head of the Indian Health Service. Bernie founded the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation and the Daybreak Star Art Center. Well, we had this vision when we went into United Indians that we would stake a claim. It was Fort Lawton then. And Fort Lawton was shortly going to be turned over as federal surplus land by the United States Government Services Administration. And so when I ran into Bernie on the Capitol steps, he was handing out flyers. And the flyers were just to promote a mini powwow in Seattle, at which point we were going to discuss the intended, well, I wouldn't say invasion, because we weren't invading, we were just walking in and staking a claim, literally reading a proclamation and a claim for the land, for a portion of the land, which we did, and which Bernie did, and then everybody ran through the gates. We didn't realize there was 3,700 MPs still stationed there, and there were 96 of us. They didn't surrender. We asked them. But we made an impact, so much so that they beat the hell out of us and threw us in the stockade. And what did they say? How did they put that? They wrote us letters of expulsion, told us if we ever came back, we would be in violation and charged with felonious rioting. Well, that ran me to my thesaurus. What the fuck is that? I thought rioting was a felony. felonious rioting. Anyway, after the beating in which we took, we dug our heels in, and we weren't going to surrender our claim then. So we set up a village in front of the gates, right at the gate of Fort Lawton, the entrance, our own little resurrection village. Teepees, tents, you name it. Some people just had, what do you call them, where you string a rope to the ground and throw a tarp over it. Oh, homeless encampment. That's it. Well, that's kind of where we came from. That we were the first homeless people in Seattle once again. And, well, this went on for 1 month. The second invasion, or the second entrance, came 1 week later on March 13th or 14th, I forget. We went back in again. Well, during that time, the government had smartened up, and they strung concertina wire all around the 1,100 acres of Fort Lawton, razor ribbon. Well, during the first occupation, we were joined by, some very well-meaning people, and some with celebrity status. And they drew attention for us. They called attention from a worldwide audience to what we were trying to do. So we went back in, this time because they had strung the concertina wire up all around except for one area, the cliff, Magnolia Bluff, which is over 100 feet high above the water. It's about 150 feet above the water. And they didn't think we would do that. Hey, these are coast Indians. They're used to invading by water. So we came up the cliff dragging a teepee poles, our drum, and enough dry wood to start a fire. But when we came back up the cliff, we had to hang under the cliff, and we counted down the minutes as the MPs were making their rounds every 23 minutes. And so right after he left, we all came climbing up, put up the teepee, got the fire going, and we had our drummers out there, and they were drumming along. And here he comes. He stopped, and the look on his face, like, what the hell? And the next thing you know, here comes Colonel Palos, who's in charge of Fort Lawton, out there, and they're watching us. He's watching at a safe distance, out of arrow range, with his binoculars. And we're waving at him, come and join us. We were kind of, we were clowning on him. And they were very serious, though. All of a sudden, you could actually feel the air, the percussion or the concussion through the air, through the ground. And so I ran up on the berm that sits above that area we were at. We were kind of down in a flat bowl area. And I ran up on the berm, and as far as I could see, stretched out the entire width of Fort Lawton were MPs marching in that riot step, pounding on their shields, coming through. I thought, oh my God, they're going to kill us this time. And so we had amongst our invasion group, Grace Thorpe, the daughter of legendary Olympic athlete Jim Thorpe. And Grace said, okay, she said, here's the way it's going to go down. She said, you resist, or if you fight, they're going to kill you. And we got too many kids and old people with us. So when they come to get you, just go limp. Just go limp and make them put you inside of the trucks. And I remember Grace going out there, and she stopped. She looked at Colonel Palos and she said, my name is Grace Thorpe and my father is Jim Thorpe. I'm a Sac and Fox Indian. I stand over 6 feet tall and I weigh over 300 pounds. It's going to take 8 of you to move me. And she just, and she was right. It took 8 of them to move me. It was like Jell-O. Well, that's how it went. And they got us out of there, put us in the stockade again. And I remember when we went in, when they were writing our expulsion papers out, they said, they asked your name, and Bernie had said, when they ask your name, well, first of all, don't have any ID on you, and they ask your name, just give them some fictitious name. So the second time, they asked me my name, and I said, Strangling Wolf. And the officer looks up at me and he said, that's funny, last week you were farting buffalo. Gotta keep your lies straight. I'm like Donald Trump, I can't keep my lies straight. Anyway, this went on, and a month later, April 13th, we decided we would have a parlay with Colonel Palos, Fort Lawton, and we were going to read an apology to the fort, the people of Fort Lawton, to the city of Seattle. And so we called this press conference, and we had an old medicine man, Frank White Buffalo Man. Frank White Buffalo Man was the nephew of Sitting Bull. Frank was in his 80s already. And he said he had a vision, much like Sitting Bull did. I had a vision. And the answer, our answer, is going to come from the skies at noon. So Bernie made sure that we got out there at 11 o'clock, and we started having our parlay, and Bernie reads the proclamation. Okay, we're sorry, apologize, And Frank, all of a sudden, he goes, look. And we look up, well, Frank was a clever old guy. He had hired a plane to do skywriting. And it was like out of The Wizard of Oz, where the witch is flying over and it says, surrender, Fort Lawton. And at that he said, attack! And we went running back through the gates to get our third beating, our third cookie, which they were quite generous with. And well, long story short, and I mean long story short, we won. 2 years later, we won the land, 20 acres to build our center. And it's a beautiful center. We raised, through the generous donations, kind of like y'all here, through the generous donations from a lot of the tribes, Colville put up almost 60 logs. Quinault donated these humongous 300-year-old cedars, red cedars, and they're the uprights in there. The spruce, which were some of them going back to before the signing of the Magna Carta, they're the big cross ones. They're 60 feet long, they're mammoth. And we built that structure for $984,000. And then it houses now some of the finest native art in the country. One painting by T.C. Cannon there is worth $1.4 million, just one painting. And there's 8 of them, 8 of these grand, huge paintings. Well, that was our center, and that became the cornerstone for our dreams in Seattle. We had a center, we had a cultural center in which we could have dances, we could sing, we could teach classes, we could have artists in residence, which we did. It just opened the door for so much. And my driver here, my nephew, we go back every year and we do a fundraiser for one of their target, or how'd you say it? It's the monies we make are dedicated to one of the different groups within the umbrella of United Indians. This last year it was for the La Batea Indian Youth Home, which has 25 beds for at-risk Native youth. And we raised $49,000 for them. Well, this wasn't by anywhere close to the big ones that we've had in the past. At one point, we were cooking 5,700 pounds of salmon through the 3-day period, raising monies for the powwow, for the elders program. Well, okay, this is kind of a big hairy dog story. Coming back, I worked with United Indians for quite a while. I really enjoyed the entire community. There was like 12,000 Indians in Seattle that we served with educational programs, cultural enrichment programs that helped keep the families together, keep the kids in school. We had a zero tolerance for kids skipping school, running off, doing drugs, etc. By zero tolerance, I mean we'd go hunt them down, find them, and drag them back to school. And but it was a statement to the schools: you're not going to be expelling our kids because they're not here, which they would do. And so we got more and more of our Indian kids, our native kids, through graduation and into the universities. And some of them went on to international, national, international fame. And out of this came the Red Earth Performing Arts Company, the Red Eagle Soaring. How many of you are familiar with Lily Gladstone? The movie. What was the movie? Yes, Killers of the Flower Moon. She was nominated for Academy Award. She's one of the students who graduated, or who was one of the Red Eagle Soaring group. Well, many years ago, my mother, Mary Miller Marchand, who was raised down here at Aswell and Pateros, she was working with the Wenatchee Valley Museum and started recruiting me to come over. Her father, actually her grandfather, looked after me when I was a kid, which wasn't easy. I was really kind of squirrely. And it took him and my great aunt Lucy Nason to keep me eared down. But the magic behind this is that they learned how to treat my hyperactivity. Auntie Lucy would get up early in the morning and she would boil up a pot of coffee and start me out with 2 cups of coffee. Mellowed me out. It's like my own Ritalin. My Adderall. No, it wasn't Adderall, just the opposite, my Ritalin. And I would sit with her. We had a big house on Wenatchee Heights, big old farmhouse, huge sprawling lawn. And she would go out and she'd throw her quilt out on the lawn. And we overlooked the Stamstamid below us. These huge, beautiful spires that rise from out of the canyon off the sides of Wenatchee Heights. They rise like 600-700 feet. Those are all part of this great story that I would hear them tell. They would do it in segments. And it's about specksman, or in the north they say spachman, which is flint knife back, which was the dragon. And it's part of an overall huge creation story that you would only hear generally in the winter. And so I'm going to kind of the history. I moved to Wenatchee in 2017. And in 2018, I met a young lady she was a cinematographer from out of Los Angeles, Amelia Egbert Yokel. She grew up her family, she grew up upstairs in the Omak market in East Omak. That's the genesis of this young mind. And then moved to Los Angeles and went to UCLA to the School of Motion Pictures and cinematography. Well, she came up, she had read this, you can find the book back there, this book that I had done on Red Star and Blue Star, and if you ever get close, you'll see I'm wearing this little piece here that my cousin Cynthia Miller wove for me with Red Star and Blue Star. Well, she got me to write it in a script. We sat down and we put it in a script, and kind of just an outline of it. And she involved the Wenatchee Valley Tech Center, which teaches young people, especially high school kids, again, a lot of them are at risk, how to make and document stories. And so we did this film, and it was done by all high school kids under the direction of some really talented people. So it's called Winter's Tale, not to be confused with Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale. This is better.
The audio portion of The Winter's Tale was cut due to copyright issues. For more information about the film, please visit the Icicle Creek Center for the Performing Arts.
Thank you, folks. Like I said, it was done by all students, and it listed all their names there. Amazingly, every one of those students went on to college into either communications, audiovisual communications, education, cinematography, working at the news station down at Channel 13. They're doing really well. And Amelia, right after this, she got married and moved to Salt Lake City. But we were also working on 4 more. And then I had a stroke. I stroked out. And it kind of sidetracked everything. And although I've regained some of my original cognitive abilities, there's lags. And anybody who's had a stroke will understand what I'm talking about. And basically, you never come out of it totally. And so I deal with, I limp and gimp and stutters. Sound like Porky Pig sometimes. But we still are in hopes of finishing the next set of videos. And it's terrible because the Wenatchee Tech Center lost its funding under this new administration. And so we've been set back, but the Icicle Creek Foundation was generous enough to help with the production of this. And since then, this went to film festivals everywhere. We sent it to film festivals. We won what's called a Golden Laurel. You see them at the closing of all the movies and stuff. And we won Golden Laurels at the, was it Hong Kong or Kowloon Film Festival, another one in Singapore, Europe. Anyway, we ended up accumulating 7 Golden Laurels. Seattle, San Francisco, New York. And it really encouraged the younger people to continue on with their dreams. So I'm running out of wind here. I've kind of almost hit my wall. This happens. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, which isn't unusual. So I'll stick around, answer any questions. David, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Randy.
Thank you, folks, everyone. Thank you for being here. Arnold, Dale, Aaron, Cody, thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Aaron, thank you for driving me here. Although we almost didn't make it because we went to the Red Barn. We sat up in front of the Red Barn for a half hour.
I think we'd like to open it up for just a few questions. Randy's going to have a seat over here, not to push him too far towards that wall, but does anybody have a question they'd like to ask Randy while we have him here? I've got one for you, Randy. The film talks a little bit about the role of Shmeow, or coyote, and you mention in it that Shmeow has played an important role in many stories. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Coyote, he is the epitome of the trickster. He's he played many roles. He taught us lessons. He had the powers, some of the powers of the Creator to reanimate himself if he was killed, which he tended to get killed a lot because of his own arrogance. He helped bring the salmon, I'll put it that way. When man who was arrived, and then his main food source was wiped out by the great floods, Coyote was entrusted with the responsibility of feeding him. So Coyote calls all the animals together and wants any of them to step forward to volunteer to help feed mankind. Well, they kind of looked at each other, and Grizzly Bear just goes, if they're so puny and weak, let them die. Oh, okay, team player. Cougar goes, well, I eat them, I'm not going to feed them. And wandered off. One by one, they all had their reasons for declining. They all had an excuse. They just didn't want to deal with it. And I think in a way they were kind of jealous of the fact that the Creator had anointed man as something special. And so Coyote and his brother Fox, in some roles, Fox, his uncle, and some his brother. Well, Fox has got the ability When Coyote got into trouble, which he tended to do, and get killed, which he tended to do, Fox would step over him 5 times and then reanimate him, resurrect him, bring him back to life. And always, Coyote's kind of like mankind. Like I said, he was interested in basically 2 things, food and sex, like mankind. And Fox would scold him and say, I told you that was going to happen. I told you don't mess with Wolverine. Wolverine will kill you, according to my end. And Coyote messed with Wolverine. Coyote hustled Wolverine's babe. Figure out how that ends. And so Wolverine slaughters Coyote. And Coyote's unholy remains drift down the river and end up somewhere down by Priest Rapids or in that area. And Fox is wandering around one day and he comes across Coyote's remains, these skeletal remains. And he goes, I told you, I warned you, but no. So he decides, should I? Nah, I think I just let him lay there, learn his lesson for another 100 years. But then he has a change of heart. He turns around and goes back and he hop, 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 hop. Up sits Coyote and he said, I told you. And Coyote said, I knew that was going to happen anyway. And that was Coyote's attitude always. I knew that was going to happen. I could have told you that was going to happen. It was worth it. Well, that was Coyote. He was a bit arrogant, a bit full of himself. He knew that he had the grace of the Creator. He knew that he was both loved and despised universally by every other animal. And Coyote is like, in the north up here, the Okanagan is a Sinclair. We say Shmiao in the south. He had, everywhere you go throughout western part of the United States, Coyote plays a really important role as the changer, the arbiter, the word of God sometimes, the mouthpiece for God, lessons for mankind. And I lived down in the desert Southwest for a while, and they got lots of Coyote stories, especially the Numu people, the Paiute, Comanches, Shoshones, Goshutes. They probably have just as many, if not more, than we do. One of the things, when they ask to describe Specksman, and I was giving you that description, well, that's taken off from a petroglyph, 2 petroglyphs that we have showing him. And they're incredible pieces. One of them, he's got his arms spread out like his wings. And on top of that, there's a series of dots, which are like celestial power symbols. Kind of, my granddad used to tell me that was Creator's power that he was juggling. But the body shape and everything. There's pictographs in the North Okanagan up in Smerkamane, and another one up by Koyushana, Kashkamine, Merritt area, and they're almost identical to the petroglyphs down in Rock Island. We discovered some new petroglyphs when I was down there. No, we didn't discover them. We just, like Coyote, stumbled over them. And I knew from my grandfather, Kashlachan, Jerry Miller, that they were in that area. And he and his brother, Hank, when they were kids, they lived at Rock Island. My great-great-grandmother, Chosh Chosh, who was married to their grandpa, Sam Miller Sr., who created the Miller Fur Trading Post there at the confluence of the Wenatchee and the Columbia. Well, although they weren't living down there, they would go back down there and they'd bring their grandmother down there, who had set up her drying racks on Rock Island. And finally, in 1927, there was nobody else there, just them, fishing. And they would fish all summer, and she would dry salmon all summer. And Grandpa's Jerome, he said the last year they were there, they were having a hard go of it because she wasn't letting them slow down. And from where they fished on the southern part of the island, and then having to walk the salmon up over the basalt, was almost 3/4 of a mile. And you can imagine what that's like in August heat. Your salmon was almost dry by the time you got there. Well, Grandpa said he was up in Antioch, and he was talking to Otach, the old chief, and he asked him if he could use his canoes. And they said, yeah, you can just take them. We don't use them anymore. So they took the canoes down south of Wenatchee, below Wenatchee Heights, right about where Specimen's Head is. And they had a big buckboard, a big wagon, wooden wagon. They put 2 wheels in one canoe and 2 wheels in the other canoe and pushed it out. And they had their horses tethered tied to the back, and the horses swam out with them towards Rock Island. And Grandpa said their dog, Jeepers, didn't want to be left out on his own, so he dove in, swam out, and rode the horse, on back of the horse, to the island. And they got to the island, and they were able to pull the canoes and the wagon up and took them off. Now they could move a ton of salmon up to Great Grandma. Did that slow her down? Nope. He said that summer she dried over 10,000 salmon. And he said, he asked her, why are we drying so much salmon? And she said, because we're drying it for the people who couldn't be here, for our people that were driven out of here. She said, come winter, during Chinook dance, I'll give them out, 10 in a bundle, which she did. So all her dancers and singers, she gifted them with, and well, you can imagine, in a time and period in which all of our resources were being stripped from us, the colonial powers that be were trying to force us into an assimilation or an acculturation part of our history. To have 10 king salmon dried, given to you, that was like gold. And well, it was during those fishing periods, my grandfather would go and he would sleep in this little cove. He said it was like a crescent, like a little quarter moon. And he said, and it was surrounded by all the rock carvings, the petroglyphs. And he would sleep there in the summertime because it was hot. The rocks would heat up and throw the heat back down on that sand where he slept. And when he was sleeping there one night, he said, I thought I was getting ghosted. He said, I could hear zee, zee, talking, singing, just going right by me. And he said, I got scared. And he was like 13 years old. And he ran up and he talked to his grandma. He told her what was going on, and she laughed. And she said, they must like you. They must like you because they're letting you hear them. She said, those are the voices of our old-time people, going back, way back, from when they first were there, when they first started putting those carvings into the rock. And then he sat and he surmised, he said that rock is kind of like, later on we call a tape recorder or a crystal condenser. It captures sound at the optimum time. It will capture those sounds and hold those sounds. And who knows when the next time that same heat, that same light, the same exact environmental, the heat, light, everything, will collide again. And then it releases those sounds. And that's what he was hearing. So there's a couple places there, another place we call Singing Rocks. We go there in the springtime because the sun hits it at only a certain time during the year. As it crests up over the horizon and it heats those rocks, all of a sudden you hear it. You hear those sounds, you hear those voices. you hear those songs from thousands of years of recording. It's like magic. Those are some of our sacred places. We try making it out to them to listen, to hear. You know, my mother, Mary Marchand, she once told me, I was recording her, she said, you know, we're not a people of a romantic past, nor are we a people of an irrelevant presence. We've been here since before the beginning of time, and God, you know, willing, will be here until after time. And those stories, she said, you know, that our whole world is a circle. And you've heard me say this before. It's a circle, whether you want to call it the circle of life, the medicine wheel, whatever you want to call it. Our world revolves in a circle. And since the coming of Shama Shoyapis, the white man, that circle, that sacred hoop, has been broken and shattered, and parts of it are missing. Whether it was from warfare, whether it was from disease, there's another part missing. Whether it was from residential school, whether it's from church, bit by bit of that sacred hoop was shattered and dismembered. So she said, it's vital. She said, you know, when our families come together, they tell stories. And she said, and it's the same story over and over so many times, but they're remembering. They're remembering, and they're hoping that you'll remember their story too. And she said, and by doing that, we're healing that broken circle, that broken hoop. What was dismembered is healed by remembering, the opposite. So we remember, because remembering it's the healing power. And I challenge people, each one of you have a family, come from a family, with stories of your own. Record and document those stories. It's just as vital as the Bible. Preserve that, because that's going to be the thread in the fabric of your lives. Thank you.